Dean Gallea here for the TarryHollow Repair Cafe. We have a General Electric microwave oven that somebody I know brought for me to take a look at, and it's not cooking. And as you might be able to see, the clock works. There's a light on inside. But when we try to run the oven, the timer moves, starts counting down, and nothing happens. The light is on inside as it would be for cooking, but the turntable's not turning, and the magnetron that heats the food is not operating. So something has failed inside. We're going to take a look and see if we can figure it out. Okay, I've carefully removed the cover of the microwave. There's 4 screws on this one that hold it on. Unplug the microwave first. I always try to keep the plug in view when I'm working on a product that's run off AC. That way I know that it's unplugged and I'm not concerned about contacting live voltage. However, in a microwave, there can be some stored voltage in this high voltage capacitor that's over here on the right. So if there's voltage on there that could be dangerous, I want to discharge it. I'm going to check first if there's any voltage on there by putting my multimeter on the DC scale and checking across this capacitor, and it's showing 0 volts, so I don't need to discharge it. If it had anything above about 20 volts, I would want to take a piece of insulated wire that's stripped at each end and bridge it across that capacitor to discharge the voltage. Since we know the microwave is working partially, that is, the clock's working, the fan's working, and the light inside, we know the main fuse isn't blown. If we wanted to check the main fuse, it's usually right here near where the power comes in. So we know the fuse is good, but intuitively that would be the case anyway. So with a partially working microwave, one of the most obvious culprits are the switches. There are 3 switches on a microwave. There's 2 latch switches, one at the top, one at the bottom, that are closed by the 2 latches that are always on a microwave door, one at the top, one at the bottom. And there's also a monitor switch down here, which is also closed by the door being shut. The 2 latch switches have to be closed. That is, the switch has to be basically a dead short across it for the microwave to operate. The monitor switch, on the other hand, has to be open. If the monitor switch were to fail, the fuse would blow. The monitor switch is right across the AC line, and it's going to short out and blow the fuse if the monitor switch is bad. So any of these 3 switches is bad, the microwave's not going to operate. We know the monitor switch isn't bad because the fuse didn't blow. So the first thing we want to check are the 2 latch switches, and I will individually check those. Okay, I'm going to do a visual check here first. With the door open door, I'm going to come in and just turn the little bracket that is operated by the door latch. And if you notice, you can kind of hear both of those switches are toggling, the monitor switch and the lower latch switch. So those switches appear to be operating. If I don't find a bad switch that isn't operating, I would go back and check the resistance on each of these switches to see that they're closing properly and that they're not haven't failed inside. However, on this one, what I noticed at the very top here is that the upper latch switch, if you can see that plunger, the plunger should be up when the switch isn't closed. When I close the door, the latch comes up and pushes that switch down, which should normally close the switch. But the plunger is actually pushed down, which is a failure of the switch. It's not properly getting closed by the latch. Or I shouldn't say it should be coming up after the latch has pulled away from it. So right away that switch is not working the way it should. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check resistance across that switch when that's pushed down. It should be, with that plunger down, it should actually be closed. But we know it's not operating properly, so let's check it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the plugs, that plug that's taking the contacts on the back of the switch off the switch. This one happens to be a 2-conductor plug that's connected. So pull that off, and I'm going to put my meter on the resistance scale across that switch to see what I read. And in fact, it's reading completely open. Now, even though the plunger of the switch is pushed down, which should close the switch, it's actually reading open. So that explains why the microwave isn't working. At least it's a symptom of why it's not working. There could be other failures, but first thing we need to do is to replace that switch with a new one and see if that solves our problem. Alright, what I've done is I've ordered a package of 3 microwave switches, which you can get online for not too much money, probably about $10. If you notice, the 3 switches, one of them is marked NC, which means it's normally closed. That would be for the monitor switch. The other 2 would be for the latch switches. So I'm going to take one of the switches that's marked, not marked NC, and sub it in for the one that we know is bad. Alright, these switches are held in by a little plastic latch. You can pull that up and sort of work the switch out. Sometimes there's a little latch on the bottom and on the top. There's also a little peg on there that goes into the hole on the back of the switch, this hole here, that holds it in place laterally so it doesn't shift. And you can notice my new switch has exactly the same holes in the same place, so that's important to check. It also has a black plunger. It doesn't matter what color the plunger is. And I'm going to put this new switch in place. Make sure it's held in with both the top and bottom latches. I'm going to check that the door latch hits the plunger, and it does. Pushes it down. If I really want to double check, I can put my own meter on the switch, show that it's open when the door is not closed, and with the door closed, it's closed. Should show virtually 0 ohms. Yep, there, 0.2 ohms. Alright, so that switch is operational now. So I'm going to plug the switch contacts back into it. Plug it back in. And I'm going to put the cover back on the microwave, and we're going to test it again. Okay, I've replaced the cover on the microwave. Plugged it back in. The display reads power fail, as it would when you interrupt the power on a microwave. That's no matter. I'm going to open it up and put my test cup of water in here onto the platter. Close it up. I'm going to hit 30 seconds. I do hear the humming, which indicates that the magnetron circuitry is operating now. And I'm going to let this turn for about 30 seconds. Okay. In fact, the water is hot. So I think we've repaired our microwave. What we did is we found a faulty door switch, latch switch, the upper one. We replaced it, and that's all that was wrong with this microwave. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope this helps in your future repairs.